MJ Melendez is in the middle of another slump, so how should the Royals approach handling him to close out the year? And maybe more importantly, how should they handle him for next season? That's coming up in this edition of Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are tuned into another edition of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. You also can catch us on wherever you get your podcasts. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Google Podcast. We're on Odyssey, and we're on YouTube. Just be sure to hit that follow button and subscribe. We're actually only a few subscribers away from 2,000, which was going to be our goal before the season closed out. So maybe we can still get there, but still we've come such a long way since last June. We took over with under 500 subscribers. So thank you to all who have subscribed, who have sent it to people who haven't subscribed. We've really seen some tremendous growth here on the Locked On Royals channel. Now, if you are a first-time listener and you haven't subscribed yet, but you want to know a little bit more about me, I am based here in Kansas City. I work at Sports Radio 810 WHB, doing some hosting, some co-hosting, and a little bit of producing as well. But when it comes to this podcast, when you click on this link, you know that you're getting 30 straight minutes of Royals baseball. Today's show is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code all lowercase LockedOnMLB to win $50 instantly when you play $5. So go get started today over at PrizePicks. I feel like last night was a combination of talking about Mac Quattro's bullpen management, the feeling after losing on a walk-off to a team like the Yankees, the way Lucas Erceg looked, the way Cole Reagans looked. We really were able to sum up in 30 minutes what we thought of that series against the Yankees, the positives mainly that we took away, but we didn't spend too much time on the negatives. And when you do only win one of three, there has to be negatives in a certain series. And one of the negatives that I walked away with, and I think that, you know, the followers that read my tweets, respond to my tweets, felt the same way. And it's that MJ Melendez is becoming a problem again at the plate. And not just a problem at the plate. I think the defense has regressed a little bit with these offensive struggles. And even when he was struggling earlier in the year offensively, you felt like he was making good plays defensively to make up a little bit of what he wasn't providing offensively. And I do think that you have to take it with a grain of salt, because if you haven't figured out at this point that MJ Melendez maybe just isn't an everyday player, then I'm not really sure what direction to point you in. I was wrong on MJ. I think I can fully admit at this point, after my preseason predictions, thinking he was a dark horse candidate to have one of the most improved years for Kansas City, I was wrong on that. I'll admit that I was wrong, and I feel like for the most part, I do that when getting a take wrong. If I haven't, definitely respond in the comments. In the next episode, I will say that I was wrong on that particular take. I know I was wrong about Vinny Pasquantino getting into the All-Star game, but I think MJ Melendez was a guy I hitched my wagon to and said he is going to finally have a good year because he's not worrying about what position he's going to be playing. He can just focus on becoming a better outfielder, and he has become a better outfielder. The offense just hasn't come around. And last night, I'm not going to take away one game and say that that's the biggest negative of the series, because I don't believe that was the biggest negative of the series. But there were many opportunities in which he came to the plate and didn't put together a good approach. Those swinging at pitches that are nowhere near the strike zone. And we saw when he got hot for a little bit, you know, toward the beginning part of August, or maybe it was the beginning part of July, and it really carried it into the end part of August, you didn't see him swinging at pitches like that. He was able to spit on those pitches. He was hitting for a little bit more power. You could see the confidence at the plate. And, you know, he's in a bigger spot now in the lineup because Vinny Pasquantino is out for the rest of the regular season. And if the Royals can make it far enough, who knows? Maybe Vinny can return. But I'm just not counting on it at this point in time. But in his last 15 games, you've seen the old MJ Melendez again, the April and May and June MJ Melendez. He's slashing 152, 264. Again, the slugging percentage is way down, a 217 slug. We saw when he was struggling mightily, the power was gone too. He struck out 14 times and walked only 7 in his last 46 at-bats. And it just feels like this 2-week stretch has buried him once again. And it's the wrong time to get cold. It feels like, I know I've said it feels like 20 times already in this segment, but I'm just trying to get my point across. Freddie Fermin and MJ Melendez have gone cold at the wrong time, right? When Vinny Pasquantino goes down, that became the most important 30, 35 game stretch for them. And they really haven't done much with that opportunity. Last night, MJ Melendez and Fermin were 0 for 9 with 5 strikeouts. I'm not trying to say it's the overexposure because these guys have gotten plenty at bats at the big league level. Pitchers know how to attack them at this point. Now, Fermin's done a better job at adjusting to that than MJ has. But MJ Melendez is hitting cleanup, at least sometimes out there. And it's not because Matt Quatrero believes that MJ Melendez is a cleanup type of hitter. If you can recall, and this is one thing I can be proud of, that I said last week, or maybe it was right after that Houston series, they need to move Salvador Perez to the 3-hole to give better protection to Bobby Witt Jr. The next game they did that, not saying it was because of my episode. I'm just simply pointing that out. And I said it didn't really matter who they hit fourth. But preferably, it needed to be a left-handed bat because you don't want to have 3 straight righties or 4 straight righties to begin the game. That makes it easier for the manager to go to the bullpen in certain spots late where the top of the order's coming up. All right, I can have a righty facing all 4 batters. So, Matt Quatrero likes to have the righty-lefty in his lineup. You may not like it. It's what he does. And to this point in the season, now that I've figured out how he handles facing lefties, how he handles facing righties, how he's going to craft this lineup, hopefully into October, I just know that if that's who they're facing, this is what he's going with. He's done it now for 147 games. It's been the same way. And for MJ Melendez hitting in the cleanup spot, he does have power. That's undeniable. He's got some of the most raw power on the team. And the question's going to become, if not MJ, then who? However, I do believe there are good candidates now where going into the Pittsburgh series, you can try it out again. I would not hate to see Michael Massey in the cleanup spot. We know he's got a little bit of pop on the year. He's got a better OPS than MJ Melendez. And I think that he's been working the count a little bit better than MJ Melendez in those last 2 weeks or so. And as I said, if it doesn't matter who's hitting cleanup because you just want to make sure Bobby has protection in the 2-hole, well, then I would prefer Michael Massey in the cleanup spot. And you move MJ Melendez down to the 7-hole or the 8-hole, or maybe he only plays against righties. And that'll lead me into my final point here. What do you do about MJ Melendez moving forward? I think MJ Melendez will play against righties this year. I think that Matt Quatrero has done a pretty consistent job of platooning a lot of guys, and you do need MJ Melendez to give you something going into October. You do feel like the power that he has can be a weapon going into a best-of-3 series. But right now, MJ Melendez isn't a threat at the plate, and that has to change. But how do you go about changing it in the final 15 games? Do you keep playing him until he catches fire, or do you maybe give him a few days off and use him in pinch hitting roles or play him once a day and not overexpose him? We've seen Paul DeJong mightily struggle now, and he's striking out more than he has since coming over to Kansas City. Robbie Grossman can be a guy that you hit fourth because he works the count well, but again, I just don't know if Robbie Grossman's an upgrade over Michael Massey. So again, I know I went on a little bit of a spiral there. When you go into next offseason, and I think I have pointed this out before, I think you have to look at left field as a whole right now. I think you have to look at the left field spot and say you need an upgrade. I don't think that you want to platoon your left fielder. If you're going to run it back with Kyle Isbell and Hunter Renfroe, you need to find somebody who's an upgrade in left field. I don't think you want to go through one of your corner outfielders, hitting 140 for the better part of 2 months. Not to say MJ Melendez is going to be DFA'd or off the team, because I don't believe that. I think MJ Melendez will be on this team next year. He may just not be an everyday player. So I think you have to go into free agency looking to upgrade at that spot and maybe take MJ Melendez out of the spotlight. There still is a chance that he thrives in a lesser role. He plays once or twice a week. He's still got a lot of power, and maybe not overexposing him in the same way that the Royals didn't want to overexpose Freddie Fermin. You get the best qualities, the best attributes, and the most confident version of MJ Melendez. And I think that's what J.J. Picollo needs to go into the offseason thinking. I mean, you had the evaluation year. The evaluation year is who you wanted to take into this competitive year. And now that you've had the competitive year, there's no denying it. MJ Melendez took a step back. You can't go into 2025 now that you are a quote-unquote winner and say, well, we expect him to come around. There's too many holes in the lineup when you are expecting guys to come around and it's year 3 or 4 of their big league career. MJ Melendez at this point, to me, is more of a fourth outfielder. He still can provide this team value, but right now he's not providing them much value at the plate and really hasn't over the last 2 weeks. Okay, we're going to take our first break of the show. When we come back, let's talk about free agency. I know I got asked this in a Mailbag Friday, and I wanted to take the time to go after it a little bit. Who should the Royals target in free agency? If they make the postseason, they might be more of an attractive spot to some free agents, and it doesn't hurt that you got Bobby Witt Jr. on your side. We'll dive into that next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Want to give a shout out to our first sponsor today in PrizePicks. It's America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. It's also the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. And unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. PrizePicks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When your picks hit, you can get the money in as quick as 15 minutes. And it's invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. Well, I would say that the talk of the last couple of mailbags has involved free agency. And of course, we're talking a lot about the postseason, how the Royals will handle a best of 3, because in my opinion, that's the way they're trending. I'm counting out the division at this point. It would take a miracle for the Royals to leapfrog Cleveland 4.5 back with 15 games to go. Not saying it's impossible, but you look at the FanGraph odds at this point, a sub 10% chance to win the division. The focus should be on hanging on to the second wild card spot and maybe going to Baltimore, New York for the best of 3 wild card series at the beginning of October. But I still have gotten some questions about who the Royals should target in free agency, right? Where are the holes of this team? And for the most part, the Royals hit on nearly all of their free agents. I mean, you look at the starting rotation, you definitely hit on Seth Lugo. You hit on Mike Iwaka. I'd imagine Mike Iwaka is going to take his player option unless he just dominates like no other in the postseason and he feels like he can make more elsewhere. But right now, I just have that feeling that Mike Iwaka is going to return to Kansas City, or maybe the Royals can work out some sort of deal with that contract. Hunter Renfroe, for the most part, I think he bounced back. He didn't stay healthy all season long, but when he caught fire, I started to come around to that deal that the Royals gave Hunter Renfroe. Now, the bullpen, I think you could point to Will Smith and Chris Stratton and say it didn't work out. Nick Anderson didn't work out. But I thought Sam Long in a minor league deal, that did work out, right? That was an important part of the team. Garrett Hampson and Adam Frazier weren't phenomenal, but they were bench bats. I have seen moves work out much worse for the Royals over the course of the last 10 to 15 years. So I would say they hit on where they needed to hit. It's why they are 80-67 at this point and have a 95% chance of getting into the postseason. But now things are going to change come December again. Because no matter where the Royals end up, whether they miss out on the postseason, they have a catastrophic collapse, they get bounced in the first round, they get bounced in the ALDS, they get bounced in the ALCS, or they make it all the way to the World Series, none of that is going to matter for the free agency approach, in my opinion. I think J.J. Picollo took this as a year of, we're going to put the chips in a little bit, see where we get to, and if things work out, now we've got that extra bonus of we've got an MVP candidate. We showed to the players that came to Kansas City, we're willing to fight for you. We are going to make moves at the deadline to better our team. And that can be intriguing to a player that's been in a bad organization or a losing organization for a long time. You go to Spotrac and you see the free agents that are available. I always try to circle the unrestricted free agents. I don't really look at the guys that have opt-outs or player options because, you know, with the unrestricted free agents, you know they're going to be there. You could make a play for them. And there are some big names, older names, guys that are more so past their prime. You got Max Scherzer, Justin Verlander, Garrett Cole. Juan Soto is going to be the big fish, of course, in free agency. Blake Snell has got a player option. I'd imagine that he could look into another deal with the Giants. You know, Cody Bellinger's got an opt-out. Paul Goldschmidt's an unrestricted free agent. But those are guys that I did not circle on my list. Because I think if we're being honest, the Royals are going to target a corner outfield bat again because they didn't really get their fix, right? They didn't go into the deadline and find their corner outfielder of the future. Tommy Pham could come back. I don't know if the Royals are looking at Tommy Pham to come back. Tommy Pham probably wants to go somewhere he can get paid a little bit more than maybe the Royals are offering. And I'm just viewing it the same way the Diamondbacks probably viewed it last year, that they acquired Tommy Pham and then they didn't decide to sign back Tommy Pham. But the Royals are going to need a leadoff hitter right next year. The Royals are going to need somebody that can hit at the top of the order, a guy that can play a corner outfield spot. And the first one I circled was Michael Conforto of the San Francisco Giants. I had a chance to see Conforto in person. Not the best of years, but I do think would be cheap. I'd look at it kind of like a Hunter Renfroe deal. And I believe that Conforto would be an upgrade over MJ Melendez for the right price. And I think Conforto has done this at the big league level longer. You go all the way back to 2015 when he was with the Mets and faced the Royals and did well in the World Series, I might add. But Conforto, to me, he's going to be 32 next year. He's one of those more unique leadoff type of hitters. I think he's hit leadoff before. He's not a typical one. He's not blindingly quick. But I think it would be an option to look into if you were wanting to go after a left field bat to bolster your lineup a little bit. Then I would probably go to the point of, you know, your rotation is set. I personally would be okay with the Royals looking into bringing back Michael Lorenzen. I think Michael Lorenzen would be a good 5th, 6th option again because they've liked what he's done so much so far. But maybe Michael Lorenzen, if he helps this team in a playoff push, goes, I'm not into another 1-year deal. I just took that with the Rangers. I would like some more security. Who knows? Maybe the Royals give him a 2-year deal because I certainly have not been disappointed with the 5 or 6 starts that Michael Lorenzen has given the Royals. Another bat that I think the Royals could go after if we're going off the they were interested but couldn't get him, and they were interested again, couldn't get him at the deadline. I think Mark Canha has a really good chance to be a Royal this upcoming offseason. It's the same way that the Royals liked Seth Lugo going into 2023 before they had to pivot and go to Jordan Lyles. I could see Mark Canha for the right price being a Royal and a guy that fits what the Royals don't have, and that's a OBP guy first. If you wanted a better bench bat, I think Mark Canha is that guy. If you wanted to have some security of a guy that can play multiple outfield positions, I think can play a little bit of first base as well, I think Mark Canha makes a lot of sense. So Michael Conforto, Mark Canha, I think those are guys that could make sense for cheap. If you weren't going after Michael Lorenzen, I think Andrew Heaney makes a lot of sense to go after. I loved what he did for the Rangers a year ago, not so much this year. But I think Andrew Heaney is somebody that on a one-year deal, nearing his age 34 season, I think that makes sense too. If you wanted to pivot on Michael Lorenzen, if Michael Lorenzen wanted the 2-year deal, I think you get Andrew Heaney on a 1-year deal, and you hope to recreate what he gave the Rangers in their World Series year. And then maybe the last one, if you wanted to do what the Mets did this year, why not give JD Martinez a 1-year deal? I don't see harm in it, to be honest with you. I think he'd be a nice placeholder in waiting for Jack Caglione to really turn things on. You could have Salvador Perez behind the plate, Vinny at first, JD Martinez is your DH. And JD Martinez going to be 37 and a half, 38 years old. You're not breaking your back over it. And JD Martinez has been a very consistent hitter well into his career. And even if you only get a few months out of him, I don't think that's anything to scoff at, right? JD Martinez, I think every single year has gone into the offseason with the hopes of getting a long-term deal, but he kind of just gets 1-year deals. This year he's hit .248 for the Mets, and he doesn't play the field, and he's got a 1B WAR, so 110 games, an OBP of 330, an OPS of 760, an OPS plus of 116, 16 bombs, 69 RBIs. I'd take that at the DH spot, and I know that the Royals, I think, entertained it for a little bit when JD Martinez was still available, but it didn't really amount to anything here. But he's 2 years removed from being an all-star with the Dodgers. He just continues to hit. If he's not going to play the field, and now that the Royals have shown themselves as a playoff contender, JD Martinez may be enticed by that if the Royals gave him the right deal on a 1-year deal, because I think that's what everybody would be offering JD Martinez. But right now, those are some of the guys that I'm looking at in free agency. We'll probably touch on it a little bit more to Mailbag Friday. If you got any questions about that, send them over to my Twitter account at JohnnyJ_15, or you can send them over to our YouTube channel. We're going to take our final break of the show, but before we do that, I want to thank you for making Locked On Royals your first listen today. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On MLB podcast. As host Pat Sullivan, a.k.a. Sully, is here daily to provide national expertise with his trademark humor to help you get ready for the MLB playoffs here in the dog days of summer. Prepare for the Fall Classic with Sully, who has it all covered every single day on Locked On MLB. Available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. When we come back, I do want to dive a little bit into the minor league system and why I'm just a little bit worried about the guys that are major league ready going into next year. That's coming up on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Our last sponsor we want to give a shout out to is TonaI. Even with the most dedicated gym goers, you have struggles with consistency. The commute, waiting for weights, other people's sweat, it makes skipping a workout very, very tempting. With TonaI, you can choose from thousands of workouts and training the way you actually enjoy at home. TonaI is the world's smartest and most effective strength training system that helps you get stronger. Powered by AI, TonaI learns with every rep so it can deliver workouts personalized for you. It's just like having a personalized trainer at home with you, as TonaI will optimize every workout just for you. And unlike traditional gym equipment, TonaI uses adaptive digital weight to advance your training techniques. Right now, TonaI is offering our listeners $200 off their TonaI purchase with promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's TonaI.com and use promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $200 off on your purchase. That's TonaI.com, promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $200 off. I believe there is this constant battle within the Royals fan base of guys that are deserving to get a shot in Kansas City and guys that they want to move on from, right? There's always that debate, that argument, that battle of, well, just move Garrett Hampson off this team because Tyler Gentry deserves a shot, or move Adam Frazier off this team because Nick Lofton deserves a shot, or move Kyle Isbell out. We had that conversation back in April and May, and give Drew Waters a chance because he's hitting 330 in Omaha, and that's obviously going to translate. Or give CJ Alexander a chance because he can't be worse than anything the Royals are running out there right now. I will begin this argument by saying, and I'm not trying to be a Royals mouthpiece here, I get no benefits from the Royals organization. I'm not paid to say anything by the Royals organization. They don't sway me to say certain things. Just being around the organization from what I've heard from time to time, this organization, as do every organization out there, they evaluate these guys every single day. They don't just box score watch in AAA and in AA and go, well, that makes sense. A guy's hitting 330 in AAA, he should be up here. Or a guy's got a 1.4 ERA in AAA and he struck out over 14 guys per night. He should be up here because he can't be worse than who we're running out there. Those guys evaluate those players daily. They don't just box score watch. And let's all be honest with ourselves. Unless you're Preston Farr, who does a fantastic job covering Royals minor league teams and watches those games, watches film on those games, does great work, does great blogging work. We don't really watch every single minor league game. I certainly don't. I try every once in a while to watch a game, but my job on this podcast is to cover the major league team, to talk about the major league team. But what I have seen this year, more than ever, is that there's just no major league ready guy that I think can stick around, that has shown enough where they come up to the big league level and they take that job and run with it. Nick Lofton had his opportunities. I think Nick Lofton is more of a bench bat at this point. Tyler Gentry got a very small chance in Kansas City. He looked completely overmatched. Drew Waters has had his opportunities. I'd be shocked if Drew Waters gets another shot in Kansas City next year. He might be somebody they look to trade in the offseason just for some of the value that he has. CJ Alexander had a little bit of an opportunity, completely overmatched, and got claimed off waivers. The good news is, I think the Royals down in AA and High A have guys they are molding and developing to turn into everyday big leaguers. And that, to me, is the problem with the guys in AAA. I think a lot of those guys are fingers crossed. Let's hope they can give you a little bit of something. And I understand dealing with prospects, it's usually a shot in the dark. Not everybody's a Bobby Witt Jr. Not everybody's going to be a Bryce Harper, where they're a 1-1 pick. You don't even have to worry about developing them. They're going to be a superstar. It just feels like over the last 3 to 4 years, when we're talking about a guy hitting well in AAA, it almost never translates to the big league level, not for an extended period of time. And when I was down at spring training and I talked with Nick Lofton, I talked with Tyler Gentry, great guys. But the Royals' focus has shifted now to their winning games. They're not evaluating guys anymore. And Nick Lofton and Tyler Gentry and CJ Alexander and Drew Waters, they had their chance to come up and take a spot and not let it go. But for being more of a seasoned prospect, they're not 21 or 22. It's not like bringing Jack Caglione up right now. These are guys that are 24, 25, 26. CJ Alexander was 27. He was older than a handful of guys on the Royals roster. That, to me, is a problem at this point in time. The good thing is there's better guys that are coming up through High A and Double A that have higher ceilings than the guys the Royals have had in AAA all season long. So when I'm asked about, do you think the Royals should give Tyler Gentry a shot? He's better than Garrett Hampson. He's better than Adam Frazier. Well, Garrett Hampson and Adam Frazier are bench bats. They're not playing every single day. They do things that Tyler Gentry or Nick Lofton or Drew Waters cannot do. Garrett Hampson can play every position. Adam Frazier can play every position. They're not the most effective offensive threats, but they can play a lot of spots. They can be pinch runners. They're veterans. They've done this before. Those guys haven't. I don't think Garrett Hampson or Adam Frazier are good hitters anymore. They don't look overmatched at the plate. And that's been a case for a lot of the guys the Royals have brought up to try to, get a little bit of a showcase for them. Tyler Gentry had his chance when Vinny Pasquantino went down. And very quickly, J.J. Piccolo realized we need somebody like Tommy Pham, we need somebody like Robbie Grossman, and we need somebody like Yuli Gurriel to give this team a chance in the postseason. And that's the unfortunate part, but that's baseball. It's all about winning. It's about finding the right guys to give you the best playoff push. And there were too many guys in AAA this year that simply just looked overmatched at the big league level. Good news is, I think guys in AA that are going to be making their way to AAA sometime soon will have a really good chance to make an impact. And I'm more so talking about offensive guys, not so much the pitching staff and not so much the bullpen. I think there are some guys like a Noah Cameron who could help the team very early on next season. Well, that's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson. You can always find me on Twitter X at JohnnyJ_15. Thank you for making Locked On Royals your first listen today. Now go check out the Locked On MLB podcast. Prepare for the Fall Classic with Sully, who has it all covered every single day. You can find the link to Locked On MLB in the description, so you don't need to search. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Tomorrow, we're going to have a Mailbag Friday, so start sending in your questions. But until then, you take it easy, Kansas City.